Jimmy Lee Swaggart. Jimmy Lee Swaggart, born on March 15, 1935, in Ferriday, Louisiana, grew up surrounded by a mix of strong faith and musical talent. His father, Willie Leon's son, Swaggart, was both a Pentecostal preacher and a fiddle player, while his mother, Minnie Bell, came from humble sharecropping roots. Jimmy was also related to two prominent musicians, Jerry Lee Lewis and Mickey Gilley, showing that music flowed naturally in the family. At 17, Swaggart married Frances Anderson, who was just 15 at the time. Their early years together were difficult, living out of motels, pastors' homes, and church basements, while Jimmy traveled across Louisiana preaching and performing gospel music. Though he had the chance to pursue a musical career in the secular world with Sun Records, Swaggart chose to stay committed to his spiritual calling. In 1955, he fully embraced evangelistic work, using a donated flatbed trailer to preach. By the early 1960s, he had built a modest following through gospel recordings and Christian radio broadcasts. Ordained in 1961, Swaggart soon launched his own radio ministry and founded a church in Baton Rouge. This church would later grow into the Family Worship Center, and it became the headquarters of his expanding ministry. In the 1970s, Swaggart's influence grew significantly with the launch of his television ministry. Starting as a weekly program, it evolved into a daily broadcast by 1980, featuring passionate sermons, gospel music, and live church services. By 1983, his messages were being transmitted to millions via more than 250 television stations. His empire included the Sun Life Broadcasting Network and several radio stations, as well as a collection of books and biblical commentaries. He would eventually author or edit over 50 of these. Swaggart was also a successful gospel musician. His albums sold over 15 million copies, and he earned a Grammy nomination in 1981 for his album Worship. Music remained central to his televised services, attracting a wide audience with its emotional appeal. Meanwhile, in 1984, he founded Jimmy Swaggart Bible College, offering degrees in communications and education. However, the school later faced declining enrollment and accreditation struggles, especially in the wake of his personal controversies. At the peak of his fame in the 1980s, Swaggart became a well-known face in American televangelism. But this rise was shadowed by serious controversies. One of the most serious involved allegations that his ministry had ties to Renamo, a rebel group in Mozambique accused of war crimes. Swaggart's religious materials were found at one of Renamo's bases, and questions were raised about possible indirect support from his ministry via other Christian organizations. However, the most damaging events to his reputation came from personal misconduct. In 1988, Swaggart publicly accused fellow minister Marvin Gorman of infidelity. Gorman retaliated by exposing Swaggart's own involvement with a prostitute named Deborah Murphy. The scandal erupted when a sting operation organized by Gorman captured Swaggart with Murphy at a motel. Though questions lingered about the credibility of Murphy's testimony due to a failed polygraph and drug use, the damage to Swaggart's reputation was done. He appeared on national television, tearfully admitting, "I have sinned," in a now iconic moment in televangelism history. However, he did not elaborate on the specifics of the incident. Following this, the Assemblies of God suspended Swaggart for 3 months. When he failed to fully comply with their disciplinary measures, the suspension was extended to 2 years. Swaggart, however, refused to accept the extension and continued preaching, leading to his removal from the denomination. He responded by rebranding his ministry as non-denominational and pressing forward under the Jimmy Swaggart Ministries banner. Just a few years later, in 1991, Swaggart was embroiled in a second scandal. He was pulled over by police in Indio, California, for erratic driving and was found with another prostitute, Rosemary Garcia. Garcia later confirmed he had solicited her. This time, Swaggart offered no public apology. Instead, he declared that the situation was a private matter and stepped down briefly for a time of healing and counseling. Despite these humiliations, Swaggart never completely faded from view. He maintained a more modest but dedicated following, broadcasting via the Sun Life radio network and television channel. His flagship station, WJFM, continued to stream Southern gospel music and preaching. Swaggart also continued to publish Christian literature, including the Evangelist magazine and his signature Expositor's Study Bible. He even weighed in on modern Christian music trends, criticizing them in his 1985 book Religious Rock and Roll, A Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. His personal life remained closely tied to his ministry. Swaggart and Frances remained married for over 70 years, and their only son, Donnie, followed in his father's footsteps as a preacher. The next generation carried on the family tradition, with grandson Gabriel Swaggart also taking on a pastoral role. Over the decades, Swaggart's influence on the Christian broadcasting world was undeniable. Though his name became a symbol of scandal in the eyes of some, others viewed him as a resilient spiritual leader who, despite personal failures, continued spreading the gospel message. He never officially aligned with any political party, though he was often seen as an influential figure in the rise of the Christian right. His name even came up during a 2018 rally where President Donald Trump mocked his emotional 1988 confession, showing how deeply Swaggart had embedded himself into American culture. Jimmy Swaggart passed away on July 1, 2025, at the age of 90. He had been hospitalized for several weeks due to cardiac arrest. While the later years of his life were far quieter than his heyday in the 1980s, his legacy endured. For many, he remained a symbol of faith, music, and the power of redemption. For others, his life served as a cautionary tale about the dangers of mixing fame, power, and religion. Regardless of perspective, Swaggart's presence in American religious history is undeniable. A complex man whose life was filled with both spiritual fervor and very human flaws. At the time of his demise, Jimmy Swaggart had an estimated net worth of $5 million. He accumulated the impressive sum from his successful ministry work, donations, and other business ventures. And with that, thanks for watching, share, and subscribe for more videos.